Good day. Before we talk about the global consequences of the Strait of Hormuz crisis, we need to talk about how this started. Because this crisis did not appear out of thin air. It began when the United States and Israel launched military strikes on Iran in late February, at a moment when negotiations were still underway. Those strikes changed everything. What might have remained a tense geopolitical standoff suddenly became a regional war. And when you ignite a war in the Persian Gulf, you are not just playing with regional stability, you are playing with the central artery of the global economy. Iran responded by restricting access through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important shipping corridors on Earth. And the consequences are now spreading far beyond the Middle East. Under international law, the initiation of aggressive war has long been considered the gravest crime a state can commit. At the Nuremberg trials after World War II, the tribunal declared that launching a war of aggression is the supreme international crime, because it contains within itself the accumulated evil of everything that follows, and that is the reality we are confronting now. An attack launched during negotiations, a regional war triggered in one of the most sensitive strategic zones on Earth, and now the entire global economy is beginning to feel the consequences. Energy markets shake, shipping routes collapse, supply chains tighten, and the ripple effects are spreading across the entire planet. Because when conflict erupts in the Persian Gulf, it doesn't stay there. It spreads through every major system of the global economy. Now, let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz itself. Most people have heard the name. Very few understand what it actually means. This narrow passage of water, only about 33 kilometers wide at its tightest point, is one of the most important economic arteries in the world. Through this corridor flows roughly 20 million barrels of oil every single day. That's about 20% of global petroleum consumption. One narrow waterway carrying 1/5 of the planet's oil supply. And right now, Iran has effectively placed that artery under its control. Ships are no longer free to transit the strait as they once were. Vessels now require Iranian approval to pass. In practice, that means most commercial shipping has stopped. The only ships consistently allowed through are those linked to China, Russian-owned vessels, and ships destined for Chinese ports. Iran has also granted limited passage to some Indian vessels after direct negotiations. Everyone else faces uncertainty or outright denial of passage, and the effect has been immediate. Tankers are waiting outside the Gulf. Shipping companies are refusing to enter the area. Insurance rates are exploding, because when the Strait of Hormuz slows down, the global economy feels it instantly. This is not just another shipping lane. It is the backbone of the modern energy system. And when that backbone is squeezed, the world begins to feel the pressure. The first impact hits the oil market, and history tells us exactly what happens next. Every major oil shock since the 1970s has triggered global economic turmoil. The 1973 oil crisis, the Iranian Revolution, the Gulf War disruptions. But all of those shocks remove far less supply than what we are talking about now. If Hormuz traffic remains restricted, markets could lose access to more than 20 million barrels of oil per day. That is 1/5 of the world's supply. Oil prices in such a scenario could surge dramatically. $150 per barrel, $200 per barrel, possibly even higher if markets conclude the disruption will last. And when oil prices explode, the effects ripple through the entire economy. Fuel becomes more expensive, airline tickets rise, shipping costs surge, transportation costs skyrocket. Everything that moves, food, goods, raw materials, becomes more expensive, and those costs get passed directly to consumers. Groceries rise, heating costs rise, electricity costs rise. At the same time, heavy industry begins to feel the squeeze. Steel plants, cement factories, chemical producers, aluminum smelters, all of them rely on affordable energy. When energy prices explode, production slows. Factories reduce output, some shut down entirely, supply chains tighten, shipping slows, manufacturers struggle to secure materials. This is how an energy shock turns into an industrial shock. But oil is only the first wave. The second wave hits natural gas, specifically LNG, liquefied natural gas. Countries across Asia depend heavily on LNG shipments from Qatar, Japan, South Korea, Pakistan, and those shipments normally travel through the Strait of Hormuz. When the strait becomes restricted, those flows are disrupted, and LNG cannot simply be rerouted overnight. Most global LNG supply is already contracted, already committed, already sold. So when supply disappears, countries begin bidding against each other for whatever cargo remains available. Prices surge, power plants struggle to secure fuel, electricity costs climb, industrial production slows. But there is a third layer to this crisis, one that many people overlook: fertilizer, specifically urea. Urea is one of the most important nitrogen fertilizers used in modern agriculture. It is produced using natural gas, and the Persian Gulf is one of the largest exporters in the world. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Oman. These countries supply fertilizer used in farms across the globe. Without nitrogen fertilizer, crop yields fall dramatically. Wheat, rice, corn, soy all depend on it. If those fertilizer shipments are disrupted, the consequences will not appear overnight. But within 1 or 2 growing seasons, the impact becomes clear. Lower yields, higher food prices, reduced exports. Countries like India and Brazil are particularly exposed because of their enormous agricultural sectors. Parts of Africa and Southeast Asia are even more fragile. In those regions, fertilizer shortages could lead not just to inflation, but to real food insecurity. And that is why this crisis is so dangerous. It is not just an oil shock. It is not just a gas shock. It is a cascading crisis. Energy shock, industrial shock, food shock, all arriving together and all tied to one narrow waterway, the Strait of Hormuz, one of the central arteries of the global economy. And right now, that artery is being squeezed. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment.